are these people?
We're going to bring a positive story about a little bit of a W that our side, quote unquote, that the anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist side has won. I found 2 of them in the past week. Well, plus Ramasio Ozturk, which is sort of a win, but also sort of not a win, which we're going to get into in more detail later on. All right. But this is a Left Voice article. Left Voice is a Indie Media Award honoree from Initial Class for one of the best independent outlets that does not take any sponsor funding. They're affiliated with La Izquierda Diario from Argentina and a worldwide coalition of independent sites. So in the U.S., it's Left Voice. Rita Singer and Kyle Thibodeau, a report from Michigan that Power and Struggle felony charges dropped against
there too.
Maybe.
What?
But Power and Struggle felony charges dropped against encampment protesters. So finally, a little bit of a break in the wall. All right. The felony charges from last year's University of Michigan encampment have been dropped. We should mark this as a victory. So I'm going to read this article. It's pretty short. It talks a little bit about the encampment, but also remember we covered a raid a couple of weeks ago that Dana Nessel, their attorney general, was involved in also, where they broke down the doors of some of these protesters, graduate students, and like arrested. I don't even know if they arrested them, but they trampled the place. They woke them up at 5 a.m, putting guns in their faces and shit. Like, no need for that. So on May 5th, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel dropped felony charges against 7 protesters involved in last year's encampment on University of Michigan campus against the genocide in Gaza. In the same week, and this might have had something to do with it, University of Michigan President Santa J. Ono, I love that their president's name was Santa, resigned and took a new position at University of Florida. So that means that Santa was crushing anti-Zionist or anti-genocide protests. Literally, they had Santa crushing them. In explaining her reasoning for dropping the charges, Nessel noted
they were naughty.
They were very naughty. Nessel noted that the cases had become a lightning rod of contention.
I feel like this is just the next Santa Claus movie,
Santa Ono.
What's his name?
Santa. Oh no! Don't cancel the protest. Oh no! Santa.
Who's the home improvement guy?
Tim Allen.
Tim Allen. That's it.
There was Jesse Jett told a hilarious story about Tim Allen and that his phone heard him make that noise and all of a sudden started suggesting home improvement stuff and stuff with Tim Allen in it. The Santa Claus and other movies, that dude messed up. All right. So as Kyle continues, as Kyle and Rita, this is a win for the movement and shows the difference that collective resistance can make. Not only can protests and campaigns against repression be effective strategically, they can serve as the basis for the fight to build a strong movement that includes the strategic power of the working class. They show why we need to fight to keep the movement alive. And they show why a militant defense of democratic demands can build the collective experience we need to grow stronger as a movement of international solidarity. All right. As encampments spread across the country and the world last spring in the biggest student uprising since the anti-Vietnam War demonstrations, universities and colleges cracked down. On many campuses, the administrators invited police raids to break up and demolish the student encampments, complete with live streams and news reports of many violent arrests of students and faculty. The only people who were violent, by the way, were the cops and the Zionists, 99% of the time. In other cases, the administrations were able to negotiate with protesters to get them to leave on their own. Many university administrations brought criminal charges against those protesting the genocide. We've still been seeing that even in Columbia. They've still been kicking them out of school. While most of those charges were dropped within a couple of months, By the spring of 2025, some charges still remained. 7 felonies from the University of Michigan, a dozen felonies from Stanford, 8 from City College of New York, and there have also been recent arrests, like we said, at Columbia, at Brooklyn College, and even Rutgers. All right. One thing that's notable, though, about both the University of Michigan and CUNY is that those are both public universities that lead into their public character to encourage community support. All right. At both schools, the protesters facing felony charges were mainly people who came from the community rather than people directly part of the university. That, again, is not a surprise. These people don't want to put their jobs on the line. All right. The repression of the movement in the U.S. is mirrored abroad. No surprise, as seen in the case of Anasi Kazib, a railway worker, union activist, and spokesman for Revolution Permanente, which is part of the international network, right, in France. Right?
Revolution.
Right. The French state.
Oh, French? Gotcha.
French
Revolution.
state decided to prosecute for a tweet in support of the Palestinian people. All right. I remember, I think it might have been, was this the person that Richard Medhurst was talking about initially? That there was like a Palestinian, yeah,
French is the language of love.
living in Paris or in France that they persecuted like crazy. I remember this story pretty clearly. All right, by employing the violence of the state, the ruling class was mostly able to stamp out the encampments, demobilize the movement, and keep us from reviving it. Especially when school was going to be starting up in the fall, Biden and the university administrations kept the level of repression high, which set the stage for Trump to then escalate further. Thanks, Obama. Right? Trump continued and expanded Biden's repression against the Palestinian liberation movement. I mean, against the protest movement here in the United States for Palestine liberation. All right. Using it to bolster his broad attacks on immigrants and wokeness. With this twisted combination, masked ICE officers have arrested multiple pro-Palestine students, visa holders, grabbing them from their homes like Mahmoud Khalil. Him, along with others, are currently under detention as political prisoners. But again, getting these felony charges dropped is important. Universities like Columbia, caving to Trump's dictates, also provided cover for a disciplining of the labor movement, especially evident in the firing and expulsion of Grant Minor because he participated in the Hens Hall protest. Minor is also a prominent Jewish voice denouncing these attacks on democratic rights and exposing how Trump and Columbia alike have been weaponizing false definitions of anti-Semitism to support the Zionist project. Again, to see a lot more of that, check out my 3 one-on-ones with Gen X Girl 1994. She's exposed Beitar US, who's come into the picture multiple times. Now they've been feeding the Trump administration lists, and now that's come out in FOIAs. At this point, Trump's audacious attacks have garnered enough pushback that he's had to backtrack. All right. After kidnapping Khalil and Ozturk, the administration proceeded to cancel hundreds of student visas. What a mess that was. They even challenged the protections guaranteed by a green card, which my whole life has been the same. But the public outburst was severe, and the Trump administration reinstated the visas. Did they? I thought they just reinstated the database, but they have not changed the status on those visas, to my understanding, making clear that they still intended to proceed with their attacks, but would need a more legally secure basis. I believe that they are still prosecuting. What they did, according to Arturo Dominguez, was that they actually deleted the database so that these students didn't know what their status was, and the schools weren't able to check what their status was. But once that database was reinstated, it didn't change the fact that they canceled over 1,300 visas for students. It just meant that the administration and the schools could now look up in a database that those visas were canceled. To my understanding, they have not reinstated it. So that's news to me if they have. All right. He says that this article says that this shows that the state couldn't just end the movement by co-opting it back into the fold of electoralism and had to resort to the armed wing of the state and courts to suppress the movement. Okay. This is a bipartisan affair. Totally agree. In pursuing charges against the encampment, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, a progressive Democrat. No, she's not. She doesn't even advertise herself as a progressive Democrat. She's a Democrat who stood up for reproductive rights and slapped back Trump's unconstitutional attacks. That's, again, bare minimum shit. Was hawkishly going on on the attack against the movement. All right. In fact, doing Trump's dirty work. It's also worth noting that she was the only attorney general in the country to do this. Not even the Texas AG did this. Recently, Nessel sent for FBI raids in multiple cities in Michigan against pro-Palestine activists, which we covered on the show from Left Voice, making it clear how close the Democrats are to Republicans on key issues. Uniparty, like we said. Left Voice already knew that it was a uniparty and was calling this out, and capitalism in general. They're an anti-capitalist outlet. They're an alliance to keep capitalism and the U.S. hegemony intact. Capitalism. That's right. Even if it means trampling on our civil rights and targeting violence against workers, okay, community members and students, and the elderly and women and children. They don't care. They're similar to the IOF in that way. All right. But militant resistance from the left is needed to pull back on this rightward swing. The problem is that most of the left ain't that militant and certainly isn't well trained and isn't going out and getting themselves trained, by my estimate.
The militants stand startled.
Maybe like Gracie training. I mean, what would you suggest, BJJ? Some type of.
Well, I mean, sure. Also, learning how to pull trigger fingers is useful. You know, also just look at protesting tactics and, you know, try to be inventive about how to, you know, circumvent them.
I actually shared something today on Twitter
how to fight
about that.
Is the suggestion. That's all. That's a useful tool. However you want to do that.
Well,
Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling.
Well, hand-to-hand that don't involve a trigger is what I was specifically referring to. But absolutely. I actually found a website, and we'll look at that in a second, called The Markup. And they had a couple of decent tweets that I shared today about, number one, don't bring a phone, and if you have to a protest, read this guide on what to do and how to act with it, you know, what to do with it. Disable certain things.
I think I've covered that too.
Right. And then also about, is your home police department partnering with ICE? And it's a list of all of the police departments. Again, The Markup, at The Markup over on Twitter.
Stalling as a tactic is probably like learn how to stall things out physically, you know, make it difficult for them.
Yeah.
If anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Nessel also did not drop the charges out of the kindness of her own heart. She was facing, quote, months of mounting political pressure from the progressive wing of her own party, according to the Detroit Metro Times, including a protest that disrupted Nessel taking the stage at February's Michigan Democratic Party convention in Detroit. That's nice. I don't really think that the public pressure of progressive Democrats really did anything. It's the donors. It's when the money starts drying up. It's when the people stop giving you money to fight for what you're fighting for, and then you figure out why, and it's because you're supporting genocide. Oh, you mean those people don't want to give you money? And if they're going to do that, they might as well give it to the Republicans that are in power now anyway? Oh. Yeah. With growing dissent from the left, Nessel concluded, I no longer believe these cases to be a prudent use of my department's resources. That's probably because our resources are about to be stripped significantly, my guess is, with Republicans in power. It was a tactical retreat, as there is no way the Democrats could take on Trump in the midterm elections as being defenders of our rights while carrying out unfounded punishment to repress the free speech of students. They certainly could, and they would totally gaslight everybody and act like they were, but Trump would eat them alive. If Trump had to back down on the student visas, the Democrats would look worse continuing with these charges. They would then look to the right of Trump on this shit. You understand?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The movement for Palestine, I don't know if Democrats even care about being to the right of Trump. Honestly, like, they'll just say they're not, but it's the Joker. The movement for Palestinian liberation can only be won on an international basis. We stand in solidarity with the Palestinians being persecuted by Israel to the point of forced starvation in Gaza and the West Bank. And we resist Zionist oppression in our local struggles for freedom of speech and freedom of assembly in the bowels of the imperial core. That's beautiful writing right there. It's like poetry. Our struggles are inextricably linked, because what they're using Gaza as an experiment for how they intend to treat the most extreme neighborhoods in the United States. Yes. We know this.
Yep.
The AI policing, the biometric stuff that we're going to talk in a minute about biometric stuff.
The digital currencies and
CBDCs,
digital banking systems.
Yep.
And correct.
Yep. So building and protecting the movement within the U.S. and other imperialist countries, challenging the funders of genocide at home with BDS, even if they decide to make it illegal. They can't really make it illegal. I mean, you can decide where to spend your money and where not to spend your money, whether you say so or not. It's very hard to police that. All right. But challenging the funders and hurting them in the wallet is the key to strengthening the level of resistance possible within Palestine across the sea. We must fight for the abundance of food that the international workers produce daily under capitalism to get through that war zone into the mouths of the Palestinians that Israel is now cruelly starving out. Not now, has been for decades now, but now completely. Just as we must fight for the right to protest imperialism itself and assemble forces to build the strength to overthrow this racist patriarchal system from the inside out. Not administration, not presidency, system. System, baby. Wow, that was like I was a teenager again. It's a system. It's a systemic problem. We keep getting the same because it's garbage in, garbage out on the system. All right. As a global community, we must join our struggles and link the working class and oppressed across borders. We don't want genocide to ever benefit anybody. If we learn to strike strategically with all our might, if we really try hard, guys, we can win our freedom. We can win freedom for workers and the oppressed to infuse this spirit in a plan for a socialist international system. No, you need a plan first.
I call myself a joyful warrior.
I call you a drunken warrior. With this victory of getting the charges dropped at the University of Michigan, and that's, oh yeah, by the way, they dropped the federal felony charges against the University of Michigan from the Attorney General. The movement can see that the state is not invincible and can be combated by joining students, faculty, and the community in a united struggle for Palestine, linked nationally with other struggles of the working class and oppressed. Yeah, I mean, tie it to workers. Yes, sure. Mm-hmm. And workers should fight for divesting and for BDS and for higher wages, better working conditions, fewer working hours for same pay, etc. Trump doesn't have a mandate, and his attacks against democratic rights have received considerable pushback. In some ways, yes, but in other ways, not really. The more we push back as a united force, the more Trump will have to moderate the administration's attacks. It depends upon the way you push back. It's not just about pushing back as a united force. It's about methods, and it's about the avenues that you use to do that. Due to determined struggle, not duty. The Democratic Party, their duty, had to pull back their attacks against the movement in order to seem like a viable alternative to Trump. They haven't really. They still support Zionism, and they've just been in the shadows about it a little bit, but they're still there. This opens for the movement a little more space in order to unite our fight. A strategy that can win as we celebrate in getting the felonies dropped at U of M. Man, that's a lot of language just to get there. Now we have a moment to strengthen the movement nationally and internationally. This can be done through open democratic discussion where the rank and file sectors of the movement, students and workers, including through mass assemblies and public meetings, to discuss the current situation and debate what to do moving forward. I think a screening of Louis Theroux's The Settlers should also be included there. All right, I think that's instrumental in waking people up to just how bad it is. The minute they see it, they can't unsee it. We must find ways to connect and share about the processes and conclusions of our struggles along the way. By utilizing our strength in numbers and our creativity, we continue the next battle of the fight, secure the release of the Rutgers protester from jail, drop the Rutgers charges, drop the CUNY 8 charges, drop the charges against Anase Kazib, and at the same time, we must tighten our ranks to be ready for any future repression that will certainly be targeting the movement, like infiltrators who are constantly on their way in, trying to ingratiate themselves and eventually torpedo and cause drama, infighting, and derailing movements. That's the whole point of sending in those type of agents, chaos agents. All right. Ghost Star, thank you. Day 71. Ceasefire airdrop from China, who ignored everything and said, fuck it, we're doing it anyway. China. But no trucks or aid. And it's just as awful as it gets. And there has been some movement on that this week. Allegedly, Trump made a deal to get the one American hostage out. He made a deal with Yemen, allegedly without Israel at the table, which got them very upset. It got a lot of people thinking that there was some kind of a rift there. And Bibi even said that we might have to make alternative plans basically to move forward without full U.S. support. That's bullshit. All right. He's only doing this with Abraham Accord countries. So this is all a smokescreen, guys. Remember who Trump is. All right. He's the heel in a WWE wrestling skit. Shout out to Angel Rivera, Angel in the Afternoon, and Pro Wrestling Talk, which was live on the Ocho last night. Got a record, I think, most number of views we've ever had on a Pro Wrestling Talk show on the Ocho since we started it in January. So thank you to everyone who's watching over there.
American bullshit.
But Trump is an expert in manipulation, in playing the heel, in creating the facade. And he's got script writers that can help put this together so that everybody wins in their minds and comes out with a little bit of face. This one fought this one. Oh, remember, it's he pushed back against Bibi. How can you say that he's such a Zionist? Because he takes orders from Miriam Adelson, and he's still planning on leveling Gaza, and he still let them take portions of Syria and portions of Lebanon and didn't say shit for the entire time. 71 days of starvation, hasn't said shit. He could immediately get aid in there today if he wanted to. I mean, today. But he doesn't. So, fraud. All right.
Yep.
But meanwhile, we got a win there. The other place where we got a small win And again, this came from Breakthrough News, who, by the way, congratulations to Indie Media Award honoree Breakthrough News. They hit 1 million subscribers on YouTube this week. As a nonprofit, that's remarkable. University of San Francisco will divest from defense companies supplying Israel, including Palantir, L3 Harris, GE Aerospace, and Raytheon by June 1st, following sustained pressure from student activists. Also really important, my goodness. And what's really important about this is University of San Francisco is where? Silicon Valley.
In San Francisco?
Where's Palantir based? Silicon Valley. This is their
Silicon
backyard.
Valley?
They have to turn around and hit companies that are right in their backyard and say no. And this comes after months of protests, including a recent library occupation renamed in honor of Hossam Shabbat. All right, who Reef did a detailed story about on INN News a couple of months ago when they murdered him and targeted him as one of the few remaining journalists that was broadcasting on a daily basis and sharing stuff regularly. While the University of San Francisco insists that the decision was already planned, students say it resulted from negotiations and unrelenting pressure since last spring's encampments. They're certainly not divesting if there's no pressure. They're just not. So that's a win. And we're going to take that as a win. Also, you know who divested of INN is YouTube. So if you're able to, and of means, this is where you can do so. Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, and at innnewsletter.com, or at indiemediatoday.com, where we are actually live right now over on Substack. I'm so excited to be able to stream live to Substack. Such a geek about all that stuff. I'm sorry to be like a little over the moon about it, but it was a struggle, man. I begged these guys for years, hey, we would like to be able to send the show there. Got a nice base of people that subscribe only through there. That may be the only place they see us. How do we get through the algorithms? And what I love about this is that every single person that subscribes,
Substack newsletter near you.
Yes, every person that subscribes to innnewsletter.com gets this emailed to their inbox when we go live. Guaranteed. I don't have to worry about the alerts not working or the filter. If you turn on the emails, you're going to get it. Support independent media. We need it more than ever.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen? To 50,000 died. And now we know our mission. We form a militia, make Congress a prison.